Hello, this is John D'Amatos from Kickstarter, the Director of Design and Tech here with the Outreach team on Communities. And I'm here today at a creator hangout with David and Caleb from Power Practical. Hey guys, how are you doing today?
Good.
So, thank you both for joining me. Before we start, this is a live broadcast. If anybody has any questions, you feel free to tweet us at Kickstarter Tips or ask us live on the Google Hangout. So gentlemen, Caleb and David, I have known you guys for a few years. You have launched a total of 4 campaigns with us. Is that correct?
6 if you include. Yeah.
Wait, this is amazing. This always happens to me. I always find out that there were more campaigns prior to the ones that I knew about. So let's kind of like clear the air and get on the same page. Take me to the first campaign. Tell us a little bit about what it was, how you guys came up with the idea, and why you came to Kickstarter.
Yeah, so the first campaign was for the Power Pot, our backpacking pot that makes electricity. That was in April of 2012. We launched that campaign under my account, David Toledo, and we did a subsequent larger model of the Power Pot under that account as well. And then we kind of went from being just a product brand to forming an actual company and building more of a brand. And that's when we made the Power Practical account. And we have 4 Kickstarters under the Power Practical brand.
Yeah, but if we look back in time, in 2012, what we had was David and another one of the founders, Paul, material science engineers, invented this sweet product called the Power Pot. And, we didn't really know how to take it to market or what to do. And a bunch of my buddies were doing this thing called crowdfunding. And it was just like, we have an interesting product. Let's put together a campaign and put it live and see what happens. And 30 days later, we had raised 126 grand and pre-sold like 1,000 units. And then it was like, alrighty, I guess we got to produce 1,000 units. So we rented some space, bought some equipment, convinced a bunch of friends with some pizza and other things to help us build Power Pots over that summer. And then we decided it was really a productive channel or a productive vehicle for a small company to, take an idea and make it a reality. And so we've gone back to the platform multiple times, and it continues to be really super productive for our company.
That's amazing. There's so many directions that I kind of want to take this in. I want to start a little bit with the difference between an idea, a prototype, a project, and a company. You said you started with an idea. What was the idea? What was that conversation like? What really kind of sparked it into being a prototype?
So I built the first prototype in my basement back when I was in college, and I was familiar with the technology from an academic standpoint. And I Googled around online. I was like, hey, I'm studying thermoelectrics. I want to buy a thermoelectric generator and play with it. Go online, can't find any thermoelectric generators on the market that I could buy and play with this technology that I'm learning about. So then that kind of sparked the idea of, all right, let's make a thermoelectric generator that, people can familiarize themselves with the technology.
And when you were thinking about it as a product, at what point do you realize, okay, I can't just make one, I have to make a large number? What was that number in your head that made it practical?
Like 1,000.
Okay, so you're like, all right, so we need about 1,000 of these. And when do you start kind of bringing in other people to kind of work on this with you?
So yeah, I left, I was a graduate student, and I left to pursue this idea of the Power Pot in 2011, came back to Salt Lake, and quickly recruited Caleb onto the team to help with the business end. He introduced us to crowdfunding, and that was our vehicle from going from an idea to a product. So started with an idea, made a prototype in the basement, then how do you go from a prototype to a product? That's a lot of work, both on design for manufacturing and how do you get the money for it.
Talk to us about design for manufacturing and the challenges that in general exist in that space, and the ones that you guys might have faced that you can relate some interesting ideas from.
Yeah, so your first question, how many were we going for 1,000? Looking into all the parts and pieces and everything, is 1,000 is the least of anything you can buy on and get economies of scale. So we knew we needed to make at least 1,000. We had to buy at least 1,000 pots and at least 1,000 of every part.
And was the plan for you guys to assemble them yourselves?
Yep, that was the whole plan from the beginning and that's what we did, is build them in the USA. So we started out, we probably built 50 or 100, about maybe 100, 150 actually power pots before we did the crowdfunding campaign.
Oh,
And,
interesting. Okay.
and I mean, a lot of them were just prototypes that didn't work very well and we broke quickly, but you know, we got a good idea of what we needed to do to make it a mess. And then we had an idea of what tools we needed. And so we launched the campaign already having a plan of this is how we're going to build it, this is the tools we're going to need, and this is how long we think each pod is going to take if we have those tools.
Yeah, so it's super interesting. One of the things that I see with like mature, stable companies like yours is that they understand pretty consciously from the very beginning that they're not just going for a project, they're not just going for 100 something, they're going to consciously build like an umbrella company that can sustain it and build out like probably more products. Were you thinking about more products from the beginning, or did that just come out naturally?
I think that came out naturally.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned, Caleb, that crowdfunding was on your radar, that you had a few friends that had done it. What were those initial conversations like? Who did you end up talking to, and what kind of made you guys make the decision?
I was part of a kind of like an incubator, if you will, of just CEO or people trying to make startups. And when you kind of hang out or with a group of people like that, you're able to learn kind of what tools other people are leveraging. And when you're all relatively young and have relatively little amounts of money to invest in a company, what that tends to lead to is figuring out cost-effective solutions to either building prototypes or sourcing manufacturing or even product launches. Mm-hmm. And so part of that conversation around, okay, if you have a prototype and you need to launch it or you need money to manufacture it, what's the kind of cheapest or easiest vehicle given the current status of us as individuals to do that? And what we had been learning is crowdfunding. And you know, one of my buddies did a campaign for a watch back in 2011 and did, 20, 30 grand. And that was super cool because they invested $100 in samples and then made a campaign and bam, they're 20 grand of pre-sales. And so we were like, well, we're kind of in that same boat. We don't have a whole lot of cash in terms of buying all the parts that David was talking about to make a production run. And there's this thing called crowdfunding. That's something we should try.
Okay, that's pretty great. So you do PowerPot, you make 1,000 units, you bring your friends, you feed the pizza, you deliver it. You've completed that. What comes next? Do you still sell the PowerPot at this point? And how did you get into like a post-campaign kind of like living with that as like a product that you sell?
One thing that I mentioned that I think was really important for early in our company is we sold 1,000 units, but we made 2,000.
Okay.
And we didn't pay ourselves any money out of what we raised on Kickstarter. We took all that money and we put it back into doubling up. So we got a little better economy of scale, and then that's what we use to continue to sell and grow our business.
Wow, that's really old school, actually. kind of amazing. So tell us about product number 2. When did product development start on it, and how long did it take, and how did you do the second campaign differently?
Yeah, so product number 2 was inspired directly from the PowerPot, and it's a little meter that shows how much power your device is generating. And we were having this problem when we were making PowerPots. Some devices were taking more power than other devices, but we knew the power was there in the pot. And we realized, oh wow, there's a difference between charging iPhones and Androids, whether it's from the PowerPot or a laptop or all these different, any device, charging it from anything. And that's where we came up with the practical meter, and we launched that on Kickstarter, and that one really blew us away. We thought it was a cool little nerdy toy. We were trying to raise 10 grand. We sold $167,000 worth, like over 8,000 backers.
That's crazy. That's amazing.
Yeah, one of the interesting learnings for me in terms of product development was we actually built out this whole campaign for the practical meter focusing on portable generators, power pots or portable solar panels, because, without this lack of real-time feedback, you don't know how quickly your device is charging. But what happened was we started digging in a little bit and reading articles around USB charging, and what we learned was there was a significantly larger market of people like having problems with their phone not charging at full speed from computers or different USB ports. And we actually changed our whole story that we were going to launch on the crowdfunding campaign to kind of talk about that problem of charging more broadly from USB devices and not focusing on the niche kind of portable power or portable generator market. And I think that really helped kind of the campaign blow up to a higher level. So kind of taking, you know, what product you're trying to launch and do some research into what people are talking about, because you may find these like little niches or larger niches that are relevant to what you're trying to do, which should influence your storytelling on the platform and who you reach out to in a marketing aspect.
That's incredible.
We literally rebuilt the entire campaign. We had the whole video done and everything. We redid everything. Mm-hmm.
So did you rebuild the campaign before you launched, or did you rebuild it also to tweak it while the campaign was live?
Before we launched, yep.
And do you tend to listen, now that you've also run multiple campaigns, do you listen at all to like initial feedback from backers, especially experienced backers, and incorporate it into your campaign on the fly?
Yeah, we did that during our Luminoodle campaign. People were asking for a longer Luminoodle, and based on conversations we were having with our manufacturing partner, it was a super short putt, and we introduced that mid-campaign, and it actually proved out to be insanely successful to the point where we now have a new SKU that we weren't planning on selling before, and that was direct feedback from our backers during the campaign. And kind of moving forward, what we're trying to do is leverage our Kickstarter our backers to kind of help us crowdsource our innovation, you know, where we can go to them with ideas, or, you know, if we're looking at trying to make a new model of something we already crowdfunded, we have a huge audience of people that we can tap into to get feedback that then influences our decision making on new features or any number of things.
That's awesome. So you mentioned your audience. What is it like working with like an existing community, many of which have backed multiple campaigns that you've run? How do you interact with them? What are some tools that you've learned? What are some tips that you've picked up, tools that you use in communicating with your community and kind of creating a conversation that affects your business?
I think being transparent and timely is extremely important on, you know, updates and just everything you're communicating. And I think everyone understands that it's hard building a new product, and it's good to show both your success and the pain points that you're going through, and everyone learns from it and everyone grows.
Yeah, that's really great. So now we're like, in terms of our narrative, where you've launched the second campaign, it's kind of blown up beyond what you expected. And I also sense that this is the point in which like you're starting to kind of transition from being a company that does like, your first product was based on your academic experience in thermodynamics. Your second product really goes into more just kind of like power related products. At what point do you guys start defining yourselves as more of like a product company that does things along the line of just power and USB and things like that?
I think it was right before we launched the Practical Meter campaign, we actually got a round of venture financing from local institutional investors in Salt Lake City. Mm-hmm. And the whole goal was to build a portable power company targeting the outdoor brick and mortar retail market. That was the goal of why we raised money.
Okay.
And so that kind of led to wanting to launch a Practical Meter, because that kind of furthered the story of being a portable power company. And so, yeah, that's kind of after the Power Pod and getting that traction, we set out to raise money. We accomplished that goal to then take our products into a traditional brick and mortar, you know, kind of post Kickstarter. How do we continue to grow our business?
What has that been like? That's like one of the main reasons that I wanted to chat today. I think you guys have done an exceptional job transitioning your company into understanding what a post-campaign life cycle is like for products and how to like make that successful. Tell us a little bit about what that experience has been like in terms of brick and mortars and online.
Yeah, so I'll take over the brick and mortar, then I'll let David take over the online. So like I said, we raised that money and we set out to sell into outdoor traditional brick and mortar retailers. And you can think of all the major players that you can think of in the US, we got placement in those stores. And what we learned was it's pretty expensive to play in that. There's a certain margin requirement that you need to consider in terms of your pricing model. And then two, the second thing is selling in to a retailer is different a different problem than selling through at a retail.
Can you explain that a little bit? Because those are, I understand those terms, but I want this to reach a broad audience.
So selling in means you go to one buyer at XYZ retailer and you convince them to buy your product.
Mm-hmm.
And once they say, yes, we'll buy it, they'll give you a PO, and then you ship it to them, and then they put it on a retail shelf. And then the second problem that you have to consider is how do you get that product to move off of the retail shelf? And there's a number of things to consider: packaging, where it's merchandise, what kind of advertising support that retailer can give you. All of those things need to be negotiated when you sell in, when you convince that buyer to buy your product. If you don't do that, then you won't get any of those things after it's sold in, which makes it really hard to sell through if you don't have proper merchandising, if you don't have proper support from that retail partner. And so it's at face value, it doesn't look that complicated, but after going through that process, it becomes really complicated. And then when you think about storytelling on a shelf, you only have, in essence, your packaging to tell that story and to convince that consumer to purchase the product. So if you go from Kickstarter, where you have this awesome vehicle for storytelling through video, through the page and images and all of those sort of assets that you have to kind of sell someone, you lose all of those assets in brick and mortar, and all you have is packaging. So how do you take a product from Kickstarter that you have this awesome storytelling ability to a retailer where you don't have an awesome storytelling ability to convince someone to buy it?
So how do you guys do it? As like a smart, agile hardware company, what is something that you think that you could recommend to other teams that might be where you were a couple of years ago?
Yeah, so I think our number one piece of advice would be don't go to retail.
At least brick and mortar retail.
Brick and mortar. So right now we're not trying to sell into any more brick and mortar retail.
Interesting.
We're focusing exclusively on online, our website, Amazon, and then other sites as well.
Sure.
Because if you think of the storytelling, you have pretty much all the same set of tools that you do on through your Kickstarter campaign to sell on a website, which makes it easier to storytell. Otherwise, it's just insanely hard.
Right.
And you can see if what you're doing is effective. That's one of the biggest things. Like in brick and mortar, you say you hire a PR agency or you do your own PR or whatever, and you run all these ads. How do you know if those ads were affecting sell-through at the retailer? You have no idea. But online, you start doing advertising, you do all these things, you have good analytics, you can track everything, and you are actually controlling all the levers and watching all the dials, and you can make adjustments to sell through online.
Tell us a little bit about how you guys use analytics, both during a Kickstarter campaign and afterwards as you're selling through online.
So analytics are a huge part of our business, and I think a huge part of most online businesses. One piece of advice I'd give anyone that's doing a Kickstarter is make sure you turn on your analytics, your Google Analytics, on the first day right away after you click launch on your Kickstarter. Because our strategy is to go really broad in the marketing up front and contact all the different people we can, at blogs and various media outlets. And we do all that legwork up front and make a huge list, and we blast it out. And then we see if we get any pickup. And then if that pickup, how many people is that sending to Kickstarter and our page, and then how many of those people are actually purchasing the product or backing the project. And that creates the basis of our entire marketing strategy. Once we go through that first wave, we see what was successful, and then we try and duplicate that. And we try and do as many cycles of that during the campaign as we can. And that really is our marketing strategy.
Yeah. And then to David's point, if we find those articles that are driving traffic and converting, then that is an indicator to us that we should put money behind those articles and advertise to that article's community, right? XYZ blog, they have a reach of whatever, and that it's working for the initial amount of people that saw it. So what if we can get that in front of all of those people that subscribe to that community? And that ends up being really fruitful for us.
And at this point, are you specifically also saying that you're doing marketing efforts on places like Facebook?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Okay. So the Pronto, which I have the Pronto and both Luminoodle, and I backed for the first Luminol and I think the second one too. So I'm a fan of the products. Tell us a little bit about the Pronto. I'm especially in love with it because it's made out of lightweight aluminum, so it's super strong and light.
Yeah, so that product, given we were playing in the portable power space and we had portable USB batteries, one of the pain points that we experienced internally, which I'm sure tons of people have experienced as well, is the amount of time it takes for your USB battery to recharge itself. And we knew there's better technology out there where you could take a large amount of power and store it really quickly in a small handheld size, which then would give you the ability to kind of be detached from the wall. So the whole idea was, can we take multiple cell phone recharges worth of power in a battery and make it charge in 1 hour or less? That was the goal of that campaign.
Great. And was that one different? Did it break ground in comparison to the first two? How was that one different?
It was our most successful campaign to date by far.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
And it was also, I would say, the hardest to make. We learned a lot on the manufacturing side from that, and just the battles you face, because it's equally complicated as the power pot technically, except for the difference was we weren't making that. That was made in China from the beginning. And so we weren't in control of doing all the manufacturing like we were in the power pot. So that was also our most delayed campaign because of that.
Did you work with a single contract manufacturer?
No, not. We don't make our lives that easy, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah, that's usually what happens with good products. So you worked with multiple CMs. What did you discover was like, what were some of the challenges that you think you faced as newcomers to offshore Chinese manufacturing, as opposed to doing it yourselves back home?
I think a lot of it is kind of like the motivation and the incentive, like over here, at least it's, you have a PCB design or whatever, a circuit design that you pay an engineer to do. And if it doesn't work, you just pay him again and he does it again. And that's like how you operate over here. But over there, it's like they do a design and it doesn't work. And then you're like, okay, I'll just pay you to do it again. And they're like, well, I don't want to. It's like,
that's interesting. So there's some cultural differences that have to be negotiated, and it's good to be aware of them.
Yeah, it's they want to make a product. They don't want to design. So
I see. And the enclosure seems to be like a really kind of like well-designed product. What was the experience in designing and manufacturing that?
That was actually a great experience. So that enclosure is made from a single piece of aluminum through a process called die casting.
Oh, it's die cast, cool.
Yeah, so it's essentially injection molded aluminum.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So don't know what die casting is, but literally every single designer that I talked to told me that it wouldn't work.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's always the best. When you pull off the thing that everybody told you wasn't possible. That's always nice. I think we have about 7 minutes left. I want to make sure that we talk a little bit about the 2 Luminoodle campaigns. I'm especially interested in that it's your first one that has lighting, and also that you did them pretty close in succession from one to the other. And I think now between the last 3, you guys seem to have a rhythm going. So I kind of want to discuss a little bit about like what your model is like. So let's start with Luminoodle and then go to kind of like your overall current model with new products.
Yeah, so the Luminoodle was a product that we decided, hey, we want to make another power product, and an industry we think is underserved is tent lighting. And for all of our products, honestly, we kind of have some benchmark that we come up with. With the power pot, we wanted it to charge or play power speakers off a fire. For the Pronto, we wanted it to store enough power while you're in the shower to give you power all day. For the Luminoodle, we wanted to make enough light so you could read a book without straining your eyes inside a tent.
Cool.
So
I didn't realize that you guys have like a very succinct way of like defining convenience and practicality for everything you do.
Yeah, it's like the value proposition, right? If it doesn't have value to us, why would it have value to anyone else? So
that's great. Aluminum.
Yeah.
So we set out to build this, to David's point, a tent lighting product. And when we set out, we kind of did a market analysis of what lighting products were being sold, at what cost, on different platforms, whether it be brick and mortar outdoor, whether it be Amazon. We kind of digested all this data, and we decided that we wanted to make a lighting solution that you could read a book with in your tent, and it needed to cost $20. So then what we did is we backed into what features can we add to that lighting solution that meets a $20 price point. And that's what drove our kind of design and innovation. And when it was all said and done, we came up with a really interesting LED lighting strip that, you know, you could stick to anything metal, you could hang it. We came up with some interesting ties, and it just came out to a USB port. So it kind of took this DIY LED light strip and made a kind of completed product that anyone could wrap their head around because everyone understands USB.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we did is we pre-sold roughly 15,000 units in 30 days on Kickstarter. We built it, we shipped it out. Two weeks to a month later, after our backers got their products, we sent out a product survey, kind of asking for feedback, seeing what are the top 5 or 10 things that they would want differently. And based on that feedback, we took the top 5 most requested features in terms of changing, and integrated that into the Luminoodle color campaign, which then we launched, a couple months after we did the Luminoodle campaign. And to that whole point of crowdsourcing innovation, that's where that product came from. It came from direct feedback from over 2,000 of our backers that responded to our survey, which
That's
was
amazing.
really incredible.
And you did the second campaign, how many months after the first one?
We did Luminoodle in September and Luminoodle color in
April.
So 5-6 months, something
That's
like
amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So can I extrapolate and say that like you guys are kind of like on a 6-month product cycle?
Yeah.
Yeah, for Kickstarter campaigns. Well, the next one that we're planning on doing will probably wait till first part of next year because it's significantly more complicated than what we've done in the past.
Okay.
And one thing that we learned from our Pronto campaign that I think is really a kind of a good piece of advice, at least internally, and I think other people will think it's valuable, is if you're not totally baked on what the prototype is and you're not totally baked on who's going to manufacture it and have all those bugs worked out, it's probably better to wait to launch your campaign, especially if you have intentions of selling the product after you do the campaign. If the campaign isn't the only end goal, then I would wait, because what we experienced with the Pronto is we built a ton of momentum and a ton of press, but the problem was we had all these delays in manufacturing, which led to a delay in a product launch post Kickstarter, which meant we lost all of the momentum we built during our crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important advice to hear from experienced creators like yourselves. I can say it till my face gets blue, but it has to come from people that have experienced this themselves with concrete examples and stories.
Yeah, so that's a piece of advice I'd give.
Cool. We have a couple of minutes left. Any kind of parting thoughts, any parting ideas that you feel that like are important for the larger community to know from like leaders as yourselves?
For me, just kind of the overall advice I give to any entrepreneurs is, the only way anything gets done is if you do it, and everyone's more than capable of figuring it out. There's things called Google, there's things called YouTube that answer like tons of questions. If you don't know, there's someone else that knows the answer and has published that information. And so it's all feasible. It's just a function of how much effort you're willing to put into it and like what you do every day to kind of further your objectives. And that's what kind of just helps me drive every day, understanding that point. Perfect.
What a great way to close. David and Caleb, I'd like to thank you both for joining us today. Everybody can check out their stuff at powerpractical.com, and they can also check Power Practical projects on our site. Thank you both for joining us. I'm looking forward to the next project.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. You have a great day.
You too. Cheers.
Bye.